Hey everyone, it's David Chen from /film.com, and this is my review of Rogue One, a Star Wars story.
State your name for the record.
Jin Erso.
Forgery of Imperial documents, possession of stolen property, aggravated assault, resisting arrest.
On your own from the age of 15. Reckless, aggressive, and undisciplined.
This is a rebellion, isn't it? I rebel.
Now, before we begin, I do want to mention that I will be giving away some basic plot information about Rogue One in this review, but no spoilers or anything like that, so you should feel safe watching the video unless you don't want to know anything, in which case you probably shouldn't be watching a video review of Rogue One. But Rogue One, a Star Wars story, is a movie I've been waiting for a really long time because it represents the first Star Wars film on the big screen that isn't directly about the Skywalker saga. And the reason that's exciting is because I want to see other kinds of movies in the Star Wars universe. I want to see heist movies and romance dramas and other things that are set in Star Wars, because that's really exciting. Star Wars should be about a lot of different things, in my opinion, and confining it to one type of story feels very restrictive. But Rogue One, a Star Wars story, is essentially a war film, and it succeeds, in my opinion. Like, overall, I think it's quite successful at doing what it's trying to do. There are a lot of hallmarks of war films in this movie. You get big budget, action sequences, set pieces, acts of heroism, espionage, all the stuff that you might want in a war film, but set in a Star Wars universe with all that cool production design, that art direction, the creatures, the aliens, the technology that we've already come to know and love. I'm going to talk about a few things I really like about this movie. First of all, I think the cast is fantastic. You have people like Felicity Jones, Diego Luna, Forrest Whitaker, and all these actors paint with a broad brush, but it results in performances that are really charismatic, and you kind of understand how the team that's in Rogue One would work together, and that they would be successful at doing so. And they're very believable and very likable, and just the cast really worked for me. Another thing I think that really works for me is the plot of the movie. This is one of those rare prequels. It's kind of a prequel to Episode 4 that improves the movie that it's a prequel of. Like, Episode 4 makes more sense now, and the events of Episode 4 have more resonance after you watch Rogue One. And the movie does some really cool stuff with like some little plot details and some information that I'm not going to give away during this review. That'll be a later video or podcast, but I just want to say that I think the story is great and very clever. I was very impressed with it. Finally, I think the political message of this film is one that's very welcome at this time. I mean, if you think about the plot of this movie, it's basically a character played by a woman, and a character played by a Mexican, and a character played by a Muslim, and a character played by an Asian person, and a character played by a disabled person, uniting together, forming this team and trying to resist an imperialist government that's intent on infringing on their civil liberties. And so I think it's a great film that's very relevant for our times, and certainly one that has a lot of political resonance in our current environment. I think the overall message of the movie is give a crap, do something. Don't just stand by and watch things go in a direction that you're not a fan of. And so, like many Star Wars films, this one is political, perhaps more explicitly than the other ones. And I'm a fan of movies like this that do a good job at making a statement and taking a position on something like this. But there's a few things in this movie that I wasn't a big fan of. I think the film tries to do a little bit too much in terms of the characters. You have characters like those played by Donnie Yen and Wen Jiang and Riz Ahmed, and I think they're given a little bit of a short shrift. You know, I think that not that much is done to develop these characters or give them a satisfying arc. And the movie just kind of crams them in there, and they have some really great, memorable moments. And the performances are great, but again, not enough backstory there, and not enough goes on screen for them for me to really feel satisfied by how those plot lines wrapped up. And I think, again, it's just like the movie is very ambitious and it tries to do a lot, and as a result, some of the secondary characters suffer. And that's a shame. Secondly, the film makes a decision to have some characters be CG. There are a few characters that are CG that just, it did not work at all. And every time I saw one of these characters, it ripped me out of the reality of the film very brutally. I recently got a PlayStation 4 and I've been playing games like Uncharted and Until Dawn and Last of Us. And those games are very beautiful in terms of their graphical prowess, but the uncanny valley is still there. You kind of get a sense that, hey, the eyes aren't quite looking correctly with these characters. They're not quite photorealistic yet. That's how I felt watching some of the characters in Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. It felt like they were out of a PlayStation 4 game and not like they were being filmed on a soundstage like the rest of the characters in the film. So it felt very weird whenever you see one of these characters, and I'm not going to get into detail about who they are, but maybe you'll let me know if you agree in the comments below. Finally, I think Rogue One, A Star Wars Story suffers a little bit from what I would describe as prequelitis. And what I mean by that is, in George Lucas's prequels, it seemed as though he felt like it was necessary to tie everything up in a very direct way, like events, A lead to event B, lead to event C, and that's how things were when you started watching them in episode 4, or episode 2, or whatever. Like, just he felt the need to over-explain things to an extent that wasn't super interesting and maybe not believable to some degree. And I think Rogue One, A Star Wars Story suffers from a little bit of that, a little bit of like some things being tied up a little bit too neatly, and maybe some ambiguity would have actually helped things in that regard. But overall, I think Rogue One, A Star Wars Story is a success. I was very engrossed in the final moments of this movie, and a lot of it's just beautiful to look at. It's thrilling to watch. You really get caught up in the fates of these characters who have just been introduced this film. So that's all I can ask for when I go see a movie, for it to thrill me, emotionally involve me, and I think this one was a success. That's my thoughts on Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. Stay tuned for more spoilery thoughts on the film on the /filmcast at /film.com, as well as on this YouTube channel. If you like this video, please subscribe or like the video below, and find me, David Chen, at all these other places. Thanks for watching.